Man, what a pleasure to welcome back one of the absolute best football writers in the history of the sport that is not hyperbole, Michael MacCambridge, the author of America's Game, the epic story of how pro football captured a nation, as well as this book behind me, The Big Time, how the 1970s transformed sports in America. And of course, you all read his exceptional three-part series that go along on the Kansas City Chiefs and their bid for a three-peat, which now here we are. I guess, Michael, this is expected. The NFL, of course, is going to work its way toward Bills Chiefs. But what an honor to have you back on the pod. Thanks so much for hanging out.
Good to be back and good to be back under these circumstances. I think this is the game I wanted to see. I imagine it's probably the game you wanted to see. Um, and I was thinking about the Chiefs season, and I think if you'd asked any Chiefs player, coach, or serious fan at the beginning of the season, what is the baseline? Just the baseline lowest common denominator expectation for the 2024 season, they would say, got to get back to the AFC Championship game. Whatever else happens, you have to get back to the AFC Championship game. If you're the two-time defending Super Bowl champion and you still have a quarterback in his prime and one of the best head coaches and one of the best defensive coordinators, et cetera, et cetera. And so they achieved that. But it also occurs to me that anything else they achieve this season will be unprecedented and has never been done in history. No team that's won two straight Super Bowls ever made it back to a Super Bowl that third year. No team has ever gone to five Super Bowls in 7 seasons. If they win on Sunday against Buffalo, they would do that. So just such a slender line between low level expectations and doing something unprecedented.
You outlined all of the obstacles that past teams faced when they were trying to three-peat, and it's all at the site. If you haven't read it, make sure you make a point to do so, everyone. But the 2024 Kansas City Chiefs, what has been their number one obstacle to getting back to this point, back to the doorstep, and how were they able to blast through it? You watched this team closely all season long.
I think the number one obstacle is the five best quarterbacks in pro football are in the AFC. And the other four best quarterbacks in the AFC are hungry slash obsessed with taking down the Kansas City Chiefs. There is just this sense of everybody is going to give the two-time defending Super Bowl champions their absolute best. And it doesn't matter if it's the Carolina Panthers, who are whatever they were, 11 and a half point underdogs. They're going to show up, and Bryce Young's renaissance is going to begin on that day. Chargers, Raiders, every one of those teams is going to show up. And that was to be expected. That was one of the obstacles that the people I spoke to for the three-part series I wrote for you this summer, they talked about. It's just, I can remember after the Chiefs lost to the Bengals, 2021 AFC Championship game. Chris Jones had the chance to sack Joe Burrow, and Joe Burrow eluded him in what would have been a drive-killing sack, and the Chiefs would have won the game. And Chris Jones said every day during that offseason, he was working out. He was obsessed with, I've got to make sure that the next time I get this chance, I close the deal. And that's true of Buffalo. It's true of Baltimore. It's true of the Chargers under Harbaugh. What were they trying to do? They were trying to assert themselves. The Broncos under Sean Payton, the Bengals, for God's sake, everybody was coming at you. And so I think that a combination of that and then the collective consciousness of a mature football team, the Chiefs, like other great dynasties, tend to play on an even keel. They tend to not get too far up, too far down. There's this collective intelligence that says we are not going to play the best game of the season against the Atlanta Falcons in September. We're going to do what
Yeah.
we have to do. And so that leads to a lot of close wins. It has led this year to a lot of fortunate wins, but any football coach will tell you we make our own good fortune, you know?
Totally agree. And I've done it myself. We throw around like black magic terms, and they're working some voodoo. There's something going on late in these games, but when you're a dynastic team, you create your own luck. You kind of create a lot of this.
Hmm.
So you're watching these finishes. Why? So if you're gonna play, if somebody were to say they're lucky, like this isn't the same old Chiefs. They haven't played well. They're just pulling out these games at the end. What would you say to that argument?
Well, on one hand, I would say this is the same old Chiefs because even any of their Super Bowl wins, they have not been a dominant team. They were behind by double digits all three postseason games in 2019 in Mahomes' second year as a starter. And you saw them last year. Christmas Day, they lose to the Raiders. They're 9-6, and everybody says, "What's wrong with the Chiefs?" Well, a lot of the same things that troubled the Chiefs this year. But I remember Chuck Noll, who I wrote a biography about 10 years ago. He was talking about taking over the Steelers, who'd had, generations of losing seasons. And he said, the thing I understood is the first thing you need to do to win football games is not lose football games. And the Chiefs have become extraordinarily good. They're not a dominant team, but they have become extraordinarily good at not losing football games. And so that means you make a key stop on fourth down. That means you put yourself in a position that an interference call, it was maybe only a split second early, but it was by the letter of the law interference against the Bengals. You get your call. Still have to kick a 51-yard field goal to win the game. Um, the Raiders, with the game in their hands, Arrowhead Stadium's making a lot of noise, and the center is tapped on the butt by the guard and makes a snap before the quarterback's ready for it. Massive spastic screw up for the Raiders, but you gotta hang around. Same thing with the blocked field goal against the Broncos. It's just, yeah, it is. Were they lucky to go 15-2? No question they were lucky to go 15-2, but they also put themselves in position to go 15-2. So
Yeah.
I don't think they're as good as the Chiefs were in 2020. That was the closest thing you'll see to a dominant Chiefs team. I think they were 14-2 in the regular season. Beat the Buccaneers without too much trouble on the road in the regular season. But then both Eric Fisher and Mitch Schwartz go down in the AFC Championship game, and suddenly Chiefs Mahomes has you and I playing left tackle and right tackle, and it was just they didn't have a chance. But over the course of the season, if you look at DVOA or anything else, 2020 was probably the best Chiefs team, and they got blown out in the Super Bowl.
And Andy Reid learns from those lessons. I think they kind
Yes,
of know what they're working toward. It's so similar to like those San Antonio Spurs teams, and
right.
Duncan, Ginobili, and Parker. You're kind of playing possum for a couple months, just figuring out who you are, what your identity is going to be, and then you start peaking at the right time. To you, what is this Chiefs team's identity on offense, right? Because maybe you get Hollywood Brown back, Xavier Worthy comes on. Maybe you do have some big play potential now baked in there, but then, God, I'm watching that Texans game. They got doubled up in yardage just about, and you're kind of grinding that one through. So what if if
I think
if
if the
they are
Chiefs
what
are
they want to be on
successful,
offense? What is that?
if the Chiefs are successful, there's going to be a lot of quick passes. There's going to be more because the matchups are better against the Bills cornerbacks than they were against the Texans cornerbacks. There's going to be more balls to Hollywood Brown, more gadget plays to Xavier Worthy. I got to think DeAndre Hopkins plays a role. Um, the Chiefs have not run successfully enough in the second half of the season that one thinks they're going to be able to mount a consistent ground game against the Bills. So there's going to have to be more passing. I do think Kareem Hunt, who has been more effective, has no burst, but is very good at falling forward for an extra yard or two. is probably going to get more touches than Isaiah Pacheco. Um, and the Chiefs, I would guess, are going to keep Joe Tooney at left tackle, although, they held some money out to sign DJ Humphries, and they were really impressed with DJ Humphries the first week. And then the first game he plays, pulls his hamstring, but also has some complete whiffs and looked okay in the Broncos game, but he's playing with all backups. And he had another whiff or two in the Broncos game. So I think it must come down to a matter of trust that the coach and the quarterback would rather say, I know that Joe Tooney is going to lose some battles just because he's 300 pounds and the guys he's dealing with are outweigh him. Um, but I think Mahomes has enough trust in Joe Tooney to, you know, fight the good fight and die a little bit more slowly than whiffing entirely. And so, so that's going to be the key. And then I think clearly with these two teams, Chiefs haven't committed a turnover in 8 games. The Bills have record low turn. This is a game where you're going to have to protect the football. And I can't imagine the team that wins the turnover battle not also winning the game. If one team gets an extra turnover or two, that's got to be the winner, I would think. What do you think?
Well, I was going to bring up that stat to you, and I was hesitant because I'm like, this can't be right. Like, I know I heard this week, but it just can't be. They haven't turned the ball over since November 17th against the
Since the
Bills.
Buffalo game. Yeah. And that is again, Mahomes, um, he had a point in the 2022 season where the defense was starting to play really well. And he emphasized it again last year. It's okay if we punt here. I don't have to make a superhero play. Some of the same things that Josh Allen is going through, where he realizes he
Yeah.
doesn't have to do the ridiculous thing every time. That there might be times he needs to do the ridiculous, absurd thing, but sometimes you can just tuck it in, take the sack, punt, and get the ball back in a few minutes. And that was a real paradigm shift for Mahomes. And I think that, after that Buffalo game, he and Reed and Matt Nagy just they must have made a point of emphasis. We're not going to turn the ball over. And so I do think they're going to have to be more um, they're going to have to take more risks to score off the Bills than they have in the past. I don't think they needed to do all that against the Houston Texans because they felt like they pretty much had control of the game.
Hmm.
Um, I guess the one other thing I would say is, and you can correct me on this if you think I'm wrong. I think the era of 42 to 36 Chiefs Bills games is over. I think the defenses are too good, and both offenses are so good at sustained drives that it's likely to be fewer possessions, less scoring, maybe 28 to 31 points wins it.
Totally agree. I think if
Mhm.
it's a zero turnover game, then it favors the Chiefs. Um, the Bills needed all three of those turnovers against Baltimore. I mean, you win the turnover battle 3-0, and you're still winning on, you know,
Yeah.
a drop 2 point conversion. Like you needed those takeaways. Getting stops is I like the Bills defense, but they still gave up some yards and chunks to Lamar Jackson, to Derrick Henry. I think they do need to rely on a turnover or two in this game. And I don't know if Patrick Mahomes is going to be giving you one of those at Arrowhead when he hasn't done it for 8 weeks, which tells me on the flip side, if I'm Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, Joe Brady devising this game plan, you've got to take some more risk yourself. Like you're going to
Mhm.
have to throw the ball downfield. They got really conservative in that second half against Baltimore, which I guess they, they could have done up 21-10, but it almost came back to bite you in the ass as well. You
Amari
still
Cooper
needed
still
Mark
does.
Andrews.
Amari Cooper still does play for the Bills, right?
Allegedly, and he's saying all the right things. I mean, he's been a good soldier, but man, like you acquired that talent to use him. These receivers aren't getting a ton of separation. I get it, but you still have Josh Allen. He can throw it into those tight windows. I think you're going to have to take some more chances if you're Buffalo. You're going to have to be more aggressive. I don't think it's going to be 40 something to 30
Yeah.
something. It's going to be lower scoring. But that's what I'm really interested to see on the Buffalo side of things. Offensively, are they going to at least tap the gas a little bit more in this game? Because it was off the pedal in the second half against Baltimore.
One of the things that interests me is how often the Bills are going to use six offensive linemen, because when they do, the Chiefs will, I think, most of the time add Leo Chenal to the mix. And he is great at those run fits and plugging those gaps. And that is really strength on strength. And it fascinates me to see how the chess pieces are going to be moved. Now,
Which,
to your point about the Bills taking more risks, certainly defensively they did that against the Ravens, and I agree with you. The Ravens this year, on the body of work, were arguably the best team in football in the sense that on a neutral field, the Ravens would have been favored over, I think, all 31 of the other teams based on what they did and what they accomplished this year. And yeah, Buffalo needed all three turnovers. I agree. And still, it almost wasn't enough.
well said. I do hope the Bills go with the sixth lineman because Alec Anderson is a delight. You definitely have a magnetic pull to this guy in the locker room because you don't know what the hell he's going to say. He is old school. He would definitely fit into America's Game, the epic story of how pro football captured a nation, which everybody should buy. The best football book you'll read. Who's a player like for the Chiefs that maybe we're not talking a lot about this week, not thinking a lot about? I mean, just to throw one out myself, watching that Texans game again. I mean, George Karlaftis, boy, he was a disruptive force for these guys. Maybe there's a lot of attention paid toward Chris Jones. It creates an opportunity for him. But is there a player that you think could be underrated in this matchup?
Karlaftis is certainly a good one on the defense. Um, can I throw out Noah Gray? Noah
Yeah.
Gray has been sort of the situational second tight end, especially as the Chiefs wide receivers went down like spinal tap drummers. They've run more two and three tight end sets, and so Noah Gray has gotten more reps, um, and has really had quite a good season. Has had a lot of key catches. I think that we're going to see plenty of Noah Gray. Also, I might see plenty of the blocking tight end Peyton Hendershot. You could see some three tight end sets coming from the Chiefs on Sunday. But Noah Gray has been studying at the altar of Travis Kelce for the last four seasons and picking up a lot. And it certainly doesn't have the athleticism, doesn't have that sixth sense for finding zones, but he is a weapon in his own right. And I would not be surprised to see him do things. And the one other guy, Samaje Perine, is third down back and is sort of the Jerick McKinnon like for like replacement and has been really crucial in protecting Mahomes and also coming out and optimizing Andy Reid's amazing screen game. Nobody runs screens better than the Chiefs under Andy Reid, and P Ryan has been vital in that.
Well, those are some good ones right there. You know what? I was talking to the Bills players this week a lot about just the aura and that Patrick Mahomes brings to an AFC championship game, any playoff game where he can kind of win before the ball's even kicked off. It's like that Michael Jordan effect where he's got the rings, he's got the reputation. He's already getting talked about as one of the greatest players ever, if not the greatest, when it's all said and done. And like Jordan Phelps was telling me, like he's watching film and he can see defensive coordinators operate in a state of fear. Like you just stop doing what you've been doing all year because you're afraid of this guy and this coach and this team, and you know what they've done in the past. Um, and the Bills are trying to stay present and stay in the moment and stay true to their identity. Watching the Chiefs as closely as you do, Michael, have you seen that effect with teams that play Patrick Mahomes? Like he just has an ability to kind of psych you out I mean, this is what their seventh AFC championship game in a row. He's in this game for a reason,
More
and
than
there's stuff beyond the field going on.
Yeah, I see other teams pressing, trying to do more than they are able to do. The other thing I see are other coaches taking risks that they might not normally take. Last year in the divisional playoff game, do the Bills try a fake punt at their own, what was it, 35-yard line
Exactly.
against anybody else? No, I think that they force those rash decisions. But at the same time, I keep coming back to this. The AFC is so competitive now. These teams are so good, and the margins are so vanishingly narrow. I mean, what is the most famous Mahomes comeback? It's the 13-second game against Buffalo. It's that game. That game is what everybody points to. What do you do when things are grim? Become the Grim Reaper, says Andy Reid. And they go, and it's Mahomes mojo and everything. But people forget a week later, Mahomes played the worst half of his career, and they lost a game they should have won against the Cincinnati Bengals. And so, mystique, yeah, it matters. It matters until it doesn't. And it is the sixth sense that is affecting people until it doesn't. And there is no question in my mind. I don't know who's going to win the game Sunday, but Josh Allen is an excellent quarterback, and he might lose, but he's not going to lose because of Mahomes' mystique. He's not going to lose the way other teams and other quarterbacks have lost. Doesn't mean the Bills are going to win, but it's not going to be that. He may lose to Spagnuolo's defensive adjustments. He may lose to turnovers, but he's not going to lose because of Patrick Mahomes and his mystique. I don't think he's intimidated by Patrick Mahomes.
That's interesting. I don't think so either. I don't think he gets rattled in these high pressure moments either. I mean, his postseason numbers kind of bear that out. Josh Allen's been unbelievable. The
Yeah,
question
he's
is,
been great.
Sean McDermott's defense in these elimination games, those numbers aren't pretty.
Right.
Andy Reid has had his number in the playoffs. Uh, why is that? Is there anything to just knowing him as a coach? I mean, they worked together all those years in Philly. And how do you see Andy Reid really attacking Buffalo this time around?
Well, like I said, I think it's going to be more wide receiver stuff. I think there's going to be more deep shots than we've gotten accustomed to seeing. But I still think this Chiefs team will mostly focus on controlling the clock, controlling drives. They didn't do it earlier this season in the regular season. They didn't do it in the playoffs last year. The Bills ran the ball almost at will in the playoffs and won the time of possession, but Tyler Bass goes wide right in that crucial moment. And so I will say this. If you, how old are you, Tyler?
37. Had to think for a second.
37. Okay, that's about the time you start to notice. I think as a fan, as you age, you still focus on players and enjoy players and love players. But there comes a point in your consciousness where it becomes clear that the fortunes of whatever team you happen to follow are largely dictated by the head coach and the coaching staff.
Yeah.
And you begin to identify with them a little bit more than the players, right? And I think as a fan, one of the things you want is you want to feel like more often than not, the brain power on your side of the field is going to be equal or better than the brain power on the other side of the field. And anybody who's been a fan of a team coached by, oh, I don't know, Mike Singletary or Rich Kotite or someone like that has had that just painful experience of not really sure our brain trust is going to get the measure of the other team's brain trust. But following Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo, you feel like 9 weeks out of 10, if not 10 weeks out of 10, the best scheming, the best tactics is going to be on the Chiefs side of the field. And I think that the Buffalo staff has also gotten very strong. There's no question that Joe Brady has been an improvement, and Buffalo is a more rounded offense. And it's really going to be interesting to see what the Bills defense throws at the Chiefs and how much emphasis they place on getting after Mahomes because there's no question that offensive line is vulnerable. So do you do you and can't even believe I'm saying this, but do you blitz Mahomes more because you have doubts that the tackles are going to hold up? Do you take that risk? It's the old what did Rex Ryan say that his defensive philosophy is somebody's band is going to play. We're going to go in and we're going to end this drive one way or the other. Do you risk that, or do you play back and risk death by a thousand cuts? Chiefs
Yeah.
have, I think, more 10-play scoring drives than anybody else in the NFL this year. Do you do that? I don't know. That's what the game's going to rest on.
I feel like it will be the latter. I mean, I think the Bills are pissed without saying they're pissed that the last time they played these guys, they didn't have Matt Milano, they didn't have Terrell Bernard, Rasul Douglas
Right.
is playing 50 snaps on a torn MCL, and they want to try their best against the Chiefs' best. Kind of just, in staying true to yourself. Yeah, they pressured Lamar, they pressured the Ravens a little bit more than they normally would, but I don't know. I don't know what's best. I mean, I guess that's why we're all going to watch to kind of see the tactical push and pull of this all. But Andy Reid in those moments, late in games, he is so calm, and in the split second, he knows what to do. That I think that's maybe the one. I think a lot of people in Western New York are really confident in the Bills this year, and they feel like this is the year. Hell, it's snowing in New Orleans, maybe, and they think that's some sign from the universe. Um, but Sean McDermott, late in the game, that decision that he made against Baltimore, right, to kick the 21-yard field goal and make it an 8-point game versus making it a two-score game, kind of did the opposite against the Chiefs in the regular season when he goes for the
Mhm.
dagger, 4th and 2. We need to score a touchdown and go up by 2 scores to put Mahomes away. When he's kind of faced with that moment, what does he do? I feel like you got to go for the win, man. You got to go for the kill against Mahomes because he's been that Grim Reaper to so many teams. It remains to be seen how the Bills head coach handles that moment against Andy Reid.
I thought in cold Buffalo on a Sunday night, leading by 5, you kick the field goal to go up 8 to ensure that even if the other team drives all the way down the field, which they did, and converts the 2-point play, which they did not, you will still at least have overtime, or in this case, would have had a minute and a half to go down and kick the winning field goal. Um, I think it's easier to play that daring, let's go for it on 4th and 2, to go for the kill shot in the regular season than it is in January. So we'll see.
Patrick Mahomes only needed 13 seconds not too long ago.
13 seconds. That's true. Who do you think's going to win?
Gosh, it's a coin flip game. I think the Bills win. I think the Bills 1 through 53, they get contributions from everybody. It's hard to really find a weakness on the
Mhm.
roster, like a real sore spot where I feel like last year you could look at that compromised defense and say, all right, let's get Kelsey on AJ Klein somehow here, or
Mhm.
take advantage of that there. And then Stephon Diggs, drops a bomb in his breadbasket. They've got, I mean, they don't have receivers that just get separation. I mean, maybe that would be the weakness here for the Bills, but it hasn't cost them. I mean, they're the first team in NFL history to have 30 passing touchdowns and 30 rushing touchdowns. 13 guys caught a touchdown pass. They just find a way. So I think the Bills win. I think it's let's go with a Tyler Bass field goal to make it poetic. A field goal game at Arrowhead. How about yourself?
Um, I've gone back and forth. I think I could see a game where the Bills go in and they are dominant on both sides of the ball. The Chiefs offense doesn't get untracked, and the final score is something like 28-13. But what I will say, and this speaks to some of the things you've pointed out earlier, if Spags can keep the Chiefs in the game the first half, and you can get to the fourth quarter with the game even or within one score, fourth quarter in Arrowhead with the game in the balance in January, um, then I would put my money on the Chiefs.
Yeah.
It's going to be great. This is why we watch football. This is why we spend so much time obsessing. And one way or the other, it's going to be historic. We're going to see something we've never seen before. And we've got, I do want to be clear about one thing because there's all this negative energy going on the internet. What else is new? You've got two of the very best fan bases in professional football, two of the five or six best fan bases in professional football. You've got a great stadium. You've got outdoors on natural grass. You've got arguably the two best quarterbacks, or certainly two of the three best quarterbacks in the game. Either Buffalo finally scales the mountain, or we see the Kansas City Chiefs do something that's never been done before. That's why we watch.
Could not have said it any better, man. That was so eloquently put, and why you're one of the best writers in the entire country. Everybody, please make sure you read Michael's book and his three-part series. Before I lose you, though, I want to ask you, like, knowing the history of the game like you do, and knowing that every game is on YouTube, like, if you ever wanted to see any old playoff game, you can just search it and rewatch it. Is there like an old AFC championship that people could look up just to kind of burn some time before this game that would be fun? It doesn't even have to involve one of these two teams. Like maybe a game that's been a little lost in time that I don't know would be kind of fun to reminisce.
Let's see. One of the greatest, it wasn't AFC because it was still AFL then. And I don't think there's a full game replay of this, but the NFL Films highlight package is well worth it. The 1968 AFL Championship game. Oakland Raiders go to Shea Stadium, and it is gale force winds at Shea Stadium. And Oakland, this is the Raiders team that had beaten the Jets like 3 weeks earlier in the famous Heidi game. It was played out in Oakland, where there was like two touchdowns scored after NBC cut from the game to the movie Heidi. So now it's the rematch. Namath trying to lead the Jets to the Super Bowl against a Raiders team that's trying to return to the Super Bowl because they'd gone Super Bowl two. And it was a great back and forth game, won in the fourth quarter by Namath and the Jets. And that was just seeing, it's one of those things. Shea Stadium was mostly dirt anyway by December, and seeing the dust swirling in the wind and those two teams fighting so desperately, that was a great game. That would be one worth checking out.
Love it. All right, I'm definitely going to check it out, and everybody else should as well. That is so cool. Hey, thank you so much for hanging out with us, Michael. Just amazing insight on everything Chiefs Bills here.
Always enjoy talking with you, Tyler. As Lamar Hunt used to say to other teams' owners before a game, I won't wish you good luck because that would be insincere. I'll just say, I'll just say no injuries.
There we go. No injuries. No injuries.
There we go. All
Thanks
right,
so
take care.
much.
Bye bye.